He said the baby wasn't his problem. The air in that tiny, sterile office smelled like old paper and something vaguely metallic, like a forgotten penny, and as the doctor's gentle voice delivered the news, a cold, hard knot of reality formed in my stomach. He said the baby wasn't his problem. That single, casual phrase, tossed out like a piece of trash, was the true beginning of the war, not the positive pregnancy test, not the morning sickness, and certainly not the naive, hopeful call I had made to him an hour before. It was the moment I realized that the man I had given my best years to, the man whose hands I had held through laughter and quiet worries, saw the future of our family as an inconvenience he could simply discard. I was 32, a project manager at a small marketing firm, and my life, while not glamorous, was steady, predictable, and I thought shared. I had built a home with Michael over 6 years. 6 years of shared dinners, planning vacations, and painting the living room a shade of warm gray we both loved. Our lives were woven together, thread by thread, until that cold morning in November. Our apartment on the 3rd floor of a pre-war building was always bathed in the gentle, amber glow of the setting sun, filtered through the thick leaves of the sycamore outside our window. It was the kind of place that smelled permanently of rosemary and old books, and it was my sanctuary. Michael was an architect, a good one, with a careful, measured way of speaking and a mind that saw structure and potential everywhere. He had a deep, resonant laugh that made the coffee mugs rattle on the shelf, and he was meticulous. Every book on our shelf was organized by color, every spice jar labeled with his precise, elegant handwriting. This order, I realized later, was the bedrock of his personality. He hated anything that threatened to introduce chaos. Our relationship was built on a comfortable silence. We didn't need constant chatter. I remember the Sunday mornings best. The sound of the espresso machine hissing, the smell of burnt toast, a habit I could never quite break, and Michael sitting in his worn leather armchair, the newspaper spread out like a map, the gentle flick of him turning the pages. He would often reach out, without looking up, and place his hand on mine, a silent affirmation that we were here together, safe in our routine. I loved him for that steadiness. I had come from a childhood that was all movement and noise. My mother was an artist, brilliant but chaotic, and Michael was my anchor. He was the certainty I had always longed for. We talked about having children, of course. It was a soft, recurring conversation, always prefaced with, when the time is right, or when the big promotion comes. It was always a goal set just on the horizon, a future possibility, never a pressing, immediate reality. We were happy, or at least we were content. And in my heart, I had conflated contentment with permanence. The shift, when it came, was so subtle it felt like a draft from a window I hadn't noticed was open. It wasn't a fight or a forgotten anniversary. It was a change in his physical presence. Michael was always close. Even while cooking, he would stand too near, his chin resting on my shoulder, humming a quiet tune. But in late September, I noticed he stopped doing that. The small, constant rituals began to erode. He started eating dinner in his office, claiming a new, demanding client needed constant attention. The smell of his cologne, a sharp, clean cedar, began to dissipate from my pillow almost immediately after he left for work, as if his scent itself was retreating. One evening, I made his favorite meal, slow-cooked lamb with apricots, a recipe my grandmother taught me. I set the table carefully, lit the candles, and put on the low, familiar hum of Miles Davis. When he finally emerged from his office, his shirt was wrinkled and his eyes were tired. He looked at the perfectly set table, at the flickering candles, and then at me. "It smells amazing, Sarah," he said, but his voice was flat, like a piano key played without any feeling. "But I already ate, grabbed a sandwich earlier. I have to finish these blueprints." He didn't sound apologetic. He sounded efficient. "Oh," I said. That was all I could manage, just a quiet, deflated "oh." He kissed me quickly on the forehead, a light, dry touch, and went back to his office, the door closing with a soft, definitive click that sounded to me like the severing of a small, vital connection. I sat alone at the perfectly set table, the steam from the lamb cooling, the trumpet solo from the music suddenly sounding profoundly lonely. I watched the candle wax drip, forming cold, white ridges, and I told myself, he's stressed. It's the job, it's nothing. I needed to believe that because the alternative felt too big to carry. I started cleaning up, scraping the untouched food into the bin, and the fear I felt wasn't about him being angry, but about him being absent. And it was in that quiet kitchen, scrubbing the expensive sauce off a plate, that I first admitted the truth to the silence. Something essential was gone. Something I hadn't known how to hold on to. The realization of the pregnancy came 2 weeks after that lonely dinner, a hopeful intrusion into a growing emotional chill. I thought it would be the answer, the thing that would melt the ice that had begun to form between us. I was wrong. I remember the morning I told him. It was a Saturday, the kind of crisp autumn day where the light is so clear it feels like a physical presence. I had planned it perfectly, foolishly thinking that grand gestures were still necessary in our life. I made him his favorite black coffee and placed the cup next to the pregnancy test, wrapped in a small, ivory silk ribbon on his drafting table. I stood in the doorway, my hands clasped together so tightly my knuckles were white, watching him approach the table. He picked up the cup first, took a slow sip, and then his eyes drifted to the small, wrapped box. He picked it up, turned it over in his careful hands, and then slowly, meticulously, he untied the ribbon. The moment he saw the plastic stick with the 2 unmistakable pink lines, the air seemed to vanish from the room. The color drained from his face, leaving him a ghastly marble white. His reaction wasn't the shock of joy, or even the shock of surprise. It was the deep, unsettling shock of pure, unadulterated revulsion. He didn't speak immediately. He just placed the test down with the same precision he used for his blueprints, aligning it perfectly with the edge of the table. "Sarah," he finally said, his voice low, measured, and dangerously calm. "What is this?" It's what we always talked about," I whispered, stepping closer, my heart thumping a frantic rhythm against my ribs. "Michael, I'm pregnant. We're going to have a baby." I reached out to touch his arm, but he flinched, almost imperceptibly, pulling away. He looked around the room, not at me, as if searching for an escape route, a way to redraw the boundaries of his meticulously planned life. "No," he stated, a simple, firm negative. "This is not what we talked about. We talked about it when the firm was stable, when we had the down payment for the house in Connecticut, when everything was in place." He gestured to the test with an open hand, a gesture of dismissal. "This is an interruption." I felt the blood rush to my head. "An interruption? Michael, it's our child. It's a part of us. Don't you remember all the conversations, the names we liked, the nursery dias?" He finally looked at me, and his eyes were cold and distant. "I remember goals, Sarah. This is a derailment. I am not ready. I am not financially, structurally, or mentally prepared for this kind of responsibility right now." The conversation escalated, not in shouts, but in that terrible, controlled way that felt like acid eating away at the foundation of our life. I pleaded, I reasoned, I cried. He remained a fortress of logical, cruel arguments. "Do you know what this will do to my career trajectory?" he argued, pacing his office. "The sleepless nights, the bills, the lack of focus, I'm about to pitch for the biggest contract of my life. I need stability, not this." Then came the line, the precise, calculated cruelty that broke me into 1,000 irreparable pieces. "And frankly, Sarah, how do I know it's even mine? You've been moody, secretive. Who knows what you've been doing while I was working late?" The insult was so sharp, so unexpected, it stole my breath. I stumbled back, grabbing the doorframe for support. "What did you just say?" My voice was barely a tremor. "I'm just being realistic," he insisted, his tone hardening. "I can't afford to just assume, and I won't. I need proof. And until I have proof, until you can guarantee that this situation isn't going to ruin everything I've worked for, then I am making myself clear." He walked over to his drafting table, picked up the silk ribbon, and neatly placed it into the trash can. He looked at the test for a moment, then met my eyes, the coldness in his gaze absolute. "The baby is not my problem." That was when the doctor's office memory flashed back to me. It wasn't just a memory. It was the echo of his words, which I had repeated to the kind, professional nurse a few days later when I was booking my first prenatal appointment, the appointment I went to alone. I walked out of his office, not saying another word, feeling a vast, paralyzing emptiness where my love for him had been. The apartment that had felt like my sanctuary now felt like a very beautiful, very expensive cage. Later that evening, the reality of his betrayal solidified. I was in the bedroom, staring blindly at the cedar scentless pillow, when I noticed his gym bag was unusually heavy. He had started going to the gym late, often past 10 p.m., a new habit he claimed was for stress management. I opened the zipper. Beneath the sweaty towel and a pair of running shoes, there was a small burgundy velvet box. It wasn't empty. Inside, nestled on the satin lining, was a delicate silver bracelet with a tiny heart-shaped charm. It wasn't my style. It was too flimsy, too young. I knew with a chilling certainty that went beyond mere suspicion that this was not for me. Michael had dismissed our future, dismissed our child, but he had been planning a different kind of future with someone else. The scent of cedar was gone, but now I smelled something faintly floral, clinging to the inside of the gym bag, a scent I didn't recognize. The absence of his love was now replaced by the terrible, sharp presence of hers. The discovery of the bracelet didn't bring shock, it brought clarity. Shock had been Michael's cruel pronouncement: "The baby is not my problem." The bracelet was just the physical, shining evidence that his life had already diverged from mine. The tears dried up immediately, replaced by a cold, searing resolution. I wasn't hurt anymore, I was insulted. Insulted for myself, and insulted for the quiet, hopeful life growing inside me. The next morning, I woke up, and the world had shifted from a place of emotional chaos to one of deliberate, strategic silence. Michael left early, giving me a quick, distracted peck on the cheek, and saying he had a huge pitch meeting. I watched him go, noting the precise knot of his tie, the clean shine of his shoes, and I felt nothing but a growing, icy detachment. I did not confront him. Confrontation, I knew, would only give him an audience for his lies and an opportunity to turn the situation back onto me, to make me the hysterical pregnant woman who ruined his life. I had to approach this with the same surgical precision he used in his work. I had to become the architect of my own justice. My first call was not to a friend or my mother. It was to my general practitioner, Dr. Chen. I needed medical proof, undisputed and formal. I explained I needed a detailed record of the pregnancy's progression, dating, and full medical history immediately for legal documentation. She was quiet and professional, sensing the seriousness in my tone. I had every single scan, blood test result, and medical note compiled into a formal binder within 48 hours. My second call was the hardest, but the most essential. I called Leo Marshall. Leo was a family friend, a formidable divorce and family law attorney known for his terrifying efficiency and his unshakable sense of moral justice. He had successfully represented my mother years ago in a difficult legal matter, and I knew he was the only person who could face Michael's calculated coldness with equal, if not superior, logic. When I sat in his imposing, dark wood office, the quiet hum of the air conditioning the only sound, I laid out the binder and the whole story. The 6 years of shared life, the sudden emotional withdrawal, the pregnancy, and Michael's cold, absolute rejection, including the demand for a paternity test and his dismissal of our child. I didn't cry. I spoke clearly, factually, like a witness reading a police report. Leo listened, nodding occasionally, his pen resting on a crisp legal pad. He didn't ask about my feelings. He asked about finances, assets, property titles, and his income. He saw the situation not as a heartbreak, but as a contract violation. "Sarah," he said finally, leaning back in his chair, his eyes fixed on mine. "What is the goal here? Reconciliation or separation?" "Justice," I stated firmly. "I want to ensure that this child, who he dismissed before they even drew breath, is fully and legally secured. I want full custody, and I want him to pay for that security, not out of spite, but because he has the means and he has the moral and legal obligation. He tried to discard us. I want to make sure the cost of discarding us is absolute." Leo smiled, a thin, serious smile. "Good. No revenge, just equity. That's a strong legal position." We spent the next week building the case in absolute secrecy. I became an observer in my own life. I began documenting everything. Michael's late nights, when he claimed he was at work, were noted, cross-referenced with his email activity and company server logs, which I had access to via a shared cloud account for his personal business expenses. I noted the sudden, small withdrawals from our joint savings account, amounts too insignificant to raise immediate alarm, but which, totaled, suggested a pattern. I even subtly managed to collect a few strands of his hair from his hairbrush, placing them in a sealed envelope, labeled with the date, for the inevitable DNA testing. I felt like an agent in a spy novel, moving through our shared home, touching nothing, seeing everything. Michael, meanwhile, was oblivious, relieved by my silence. He misinterpreted my detachment as depression, or perhaps acceptance. He was nicer, but in a distant, performative way. He bought me flowers once, cheap drugstore roses that smelled faintly of plastic, and placed them on the counter with a quick, "Hang in there, Sarah." He was easing his conscience, preparing for his smooth exit, convinced he had won the first round by silencing me. He had no idea that while he was busy planning his pitch for his new client, I was quietly gathering the evidence for mine. The silence between us was no longer a sign of comfortable contentment. It was the quiet before the detonation. The date for the initial delivery of the legal documents was set for a Friday evening. Leo insisted on this timing. People are tired on Fridays, Sarah. They drop their guard. They're thinking about the weekend. It hits harder. I had moved out 3 days earlier, telling Michael I was going to stay with my mother upstate to get some space and think about things. A statement which he greeted with ill-concealed relief. He even offered to help me pack, a final, hollow gesture of faux support. I only took a suitcase of clothes, leaving behind every shared object, every piece of furniture, everything that belonged to the us he had decided to demolish. On that Friday, I was settled into a quiet, temporary apartment Leo had secured for me, 3 subway stops away from our old life. My phone rang precisely at 7:00 p.m. It was Leo. Documents have been served, Sarah. Standard process server delivered to his apartment. He signed for them at 6:58 p.m. Prepare for the fallout. I hung up and sat on the edge of the unfamiliar bed, the silence heavy in the air. The fallout came 10 minutes later. The phone didn't ring, it screamed. Michael's number flashed on the screen, followed by a series of aggressive, demanding texts. M, what is this insanity? M, call me now. You have 5 minutes. M, Sarah, this is a joke. Stop this nonsense. I let the phone buzz on the wooden nightstand, watching the light flicker. I took a deep, slow breath, reminding myself of Leo's advice, do not engage emotionally. He wants a screaming match, give him a transaction. Finally, after the 6th call, I answered. My voice was calm, almost unnervingly placid. Hello, Michael. The sound on his end was not a voice. It was a roar, a noise stripped of all his usual architectural control. What in the hell is this, Sarah? You sent a process server to my home? Are you out of your mind? You're pregnant, you're emotional, and you're being absolutely irrational. I held the phone a small distance from my ear, waiting for the intensity to drop. I am not irrational, Michael, I replied, my voice steady. I am being strategic, much like you are with your career. You made it clear the baby was not your problem. I am simply ensuring that your legal and financial responsibility for the baby becomes your problem. A lawsuit? A temporary restraining order on the joint account? Child support calculations? Are you serious? We haven't even had the baby yet. This is preemptive, Sarah. You can't do this. His voice cracked, the sound of his perfect, ordered world imploding. I already did, Michael. Read the documents. They clearly outline the temporary orders for financial support, the immediate request for a court-ordered, legally supervised paternity test, and the claim for exclusive rights to the apartment. Since you are unwilling to take responsibility for your child, I am taking responsibility for securing their future. I did exactly what you asked me to do. I solved the problem. You think this is clever? You think taking me for money is going to fix this? This is financial ruin. No, Michael. Your decision to lie, cheat, and dismiss your unborn child is financial ruin. I am simply applying the law to your choices. The financial calculations were based on your reported income and assets, a structure that you yourself built. It's all very architectural, wouldn't you agree? That line hit him. There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end, followed by a strained, chilling silence. He realized I had not acted in a fit of rage, but with cold, deliberate calculation. You want a paternity test? Fine, you'll get one. And when it comes back negative, it will be done under court supervision, Michael, using samples taken from me now, and from you, and later from the baby. I have no doubt regarding the results, but I need the court to confirm them because I do not trust you, and I do not trust any test you would procure independently. I paused, letting the finality sink in. And by the way, Michael, that bracelet I found in your gym bag, the little silver heart, I have that too. I'm sure your lawyer, Leo Marshall, will be very interested to discuss that with your attorney as a contributing factor to the emotional distress and settlement terms. The silence that followed was absolute. He hadn't just been served papers, he had been comprehensively outmaneuvered. He was the architect, but I had just revealed a flaw in his foundation, a flaw he couldn't hide. He finally spoke, his voice quiet now, dangerously low, stripped of its fury and replaced with a terrifying malice. You are going to regret this, Sarah. You have just declared war. No, Michael, I said, looking down at my hands, which were trembling slightly, despite my calm tone. You declared war when you looked at the future of your bloodline and called it an interruption. I am simply bringing the battle to a legal conclusion. Have your lawyer call mine. I have nothing else to say to you. I disconnected the call before he could utter another word. My entire body was shaking, but there was a fierce, cold center of determination inside me. The confrontation was over. The litigation had begun. The court proceedings moved quickly, driven by Leo's focused determination. Michael, predictably, hired a powerful but notoriously aggressive defense lawyer named Thomas Sterling, a man who specialized in turning victims into villains. Sterling's initial strategy was exactly what I had prepared for: portray me as a money-hungry, emotionally unstable woman fabricating the entire scenario for financial gain. But Sterling hadn't accounted for the cold, unassailable evidence we had collected. The first major blow was the paternity test. Because I had insisted on a court-mandated supervised test, with samples taken from both of us before the baby was even born, Michael's previous attempts to stall or manipulate the process were thwarted. Leo had expertly argued that Michael's history of denial necessitated immediate, verifiable proof. The day the result came in, I was sitting in Leo's office. The document was brief, clinical, and devastatingly conclusive. Probability of paternity, 99.99%. Leo slid the paper across the desk. I didn't feel triumph. I felt a heavy, almost weary vindication. The truth, finally, was a piece of paper, stamped and notarized. The delivery of this document had immediate consequences in Michael's meticulously curated world. Architecture, especially high-end commercial architecture, is a small, gossipy, and highly reputation-dependent industry. Clients want stability, integrity, and trust. They want to know the person designing their multi-million-dollar building isn't a moral liability. Leo was subtle. He didn't leak anything, but in the legal motions filed, which were public record, the facts were inescapable. Michael had abandoned his pregnant partner, denied his child, and then been proven a liar by forensic evidence. The documents detailing his assets and my successful claim to freeze a significant portion for child support were suddenly visible to anyone who knew where to look. The whispers started immediately. I heard about it from old mutual friends who had previously offered tepid support to both of us. My former colleague, Clara, called me one afternoon. "Sarah, I saw Michael today at the downtown market. He looked like he'd aged 10 years. He's under stress, I suppose," I murmured. Stress. Sarah, his contract with the Kensington Group, the huge one he was pitching, was suddenly shelved. Apparently, Mr. Abernathy, the CEO, is very old school. Heard the basic details about the court filing and pulled the plug. Said he couldn't risk a public scandal associated with his firm. The public consequence wasn't just financial, it was social. Michael's arrogance was built on his professional success, his reputation for being the precise, reliable man who always delivered. Now that foundation was shaking. He tried to spin the story, of course. He reached out to a few shared acquaintances, claiming I was unstable, that the pregnancy was an accident I had forced on him, and that the lawsuit was an act of extreme malice. But those claims rang hollow against the cold, hard fact of the paternity result and the clear legal documentation of his financial resources versus my immediate need for housing and support. I maintained a rigorous silence. I never commented publicly. I never answered his frantic, angry, or sometimes pathetic emails. When mutual acquaintances called, I simply stated the facts. Michael chose to deny his child. I chose to secure our child's future through the legal system. That's the entire story. My dignified calm was the sharpest sword. It made him look desperate and guilty. The biggest consequence came 3 months into the litigation. Michael had been fighting tooth and nail over the division of assets, particularly the apartment. He wanted to buy me out for a pittance, claiming his intellectual property was the only true value. But Leo had found a small, critical detail. Michael had used a significant portion of our joint savings, money designated for the Connecticut house, to buy up stock in his own struggling firm, a move that skirted the line of ethical partnership. Leo presented this evidence to his lawyer, Sterling, during mediation, along with the detailed calculations for lifetime child support, private education funds, and the costs associated with my reduced work hours during the baby's first year. Sterling, realizing they couldn't win the paternity argument and risked a public financial audit that would ruin Michael's credit and reputation entirely, blinked. "Mr. Sterling knows that the legal cost of fighting this will far exceed the cost of settling," Leo explained to me later. "He also knows Michael's career is on shaky ground. He wants this to disappear before the trial date." The settlement was swift and absolute. I received the apartment, free and clear, which would serve as a stable home for the baby. Michael agreed to pay a high, mandatory monthly sum for child support, secured by a lien against his remaining assets, ensuring he couldn't simply walk away. Most importantly, I retained full legal and physical custody. and the settlement stipulated that all visitation would be strictly supervised by a professional agency until the child was old enough to express a preference. A silent acknowledgement from the court of his initial, absolute abandonment. He didn't come back with a solution. I came back with a lawyer, and I took him for the financial security and legal justice that he had tried to withhold from his own child. It wasn't revenge. It was the establishment of an undeniable, non-negotiable legal truth. The legal battle ended 6 weeks before my due date. The final papers were signed in a small, impersonal conference room. Michael was there, looking thin and defeated, his architect's precision replaced by a haggard weariness. He wouldn't look at me, focusing instead on the mahogany grain of the table. I signed the documents not with a sense of triumph, but with a quiet, profound relief. The legal scaffolding around my child's future was complete. The war was over. The real work, the work of healing and rebuilding, began in the quiet of the apartment. It was strange at first, being alone in a space that had once held so much shared history. I spent weeks systematically removing the traces of Michael's presence. I donated his meticulously organized books, repainted the walls from his neutral gray to a soft, warm cream, and even changed the scent of the home. No more cedar. Now, the apartment smelled of fresh lavender and the faint, sweet dust of baby powder. I didn't think about Michael. The emotional connection had been severed so cleanly by his cruelty that there was no lingering ache, only the sharp scar of betrayal. He was not a villain in my story anymore. He was a legal contract, a financial obligation that ensured my stability. The emotional warmth I needed wasn't gone. It was simply redirected. It came from my own strength and the steady, insistent, and undeniably real life growing within me. I started attending prenatal yoga classes. The soft, rhythmic breathing and the supportive circle of other women, some with partners, some without, became my new community. I found peace in the routine, in the measured preparations. Assembling the crib, folding the tiny, soft clothes, reading the manuals, and planning for the arrival of this small, innocent life that I had fought so hard to protect. I remember one afternoon, sitting in the nursery. The sunlight streamed through the sycamore leaves, creating dancing shadows on the cream walls, just as it always had. I was struggling to attach the mobile above the crib, a small, frustrating task that required more dexterity than I possessed in my 9th month. Suddenly, I felt the baby kick, a sharp, definite movement right where I was pressing against the rail. I laughed, a genuine, deep, surprised laugh that felt completely new. "Well, hello there," I whispered, placing my hand over the spot. "Impatient, aren't you? Just like your mother." In that moment, the weight of the past 6 months, the betrayal, the anger, the lawsuits, seemed to lift. This baby wasn't a symbol of loss. It was the ultimate act of creation, the proof that I had chosen life and security over fear and convenience. The fight had been for this moment of peace, for the right to sit here, safe and sound, and anticipate a future that was entirely mine. My mother was invaluable during this time. She came to stay with me the week before the due date, bringing with her an essential chaos and warmth I hadn't realized I was missing. She never spoke ill of Michael. She simply acted as if he had never existed, focusing all her energy on practical support and lighthearted anticipation. "He was structural, darling," she said one evening, stirring a pot of soup. "But you, Sarah, you're built for life. Life needs flexibility, not just straight lines." Her words were a form of forgiveness, not for Michael, but for myself, for having confused rigid structure with genuine support. When my son, Ethan, finally arrived, the world shrank down to the size of a single, powerful breath. He was tiny, perfect, and utterly dependent. Holding him, smelling the sweet, milky scent of his skin, I understood the purpose of every terrible step I had taken. The legal battle had not been about money. It had been about protecting this precious vulnerability. Looking down at his small, sleeping face, I made a silent promise. I would raise him knowing that his life was a gift, never a burden, and that his needs would always be paramount. He would never feel dismissed. That was the moral closure I needed. Michael's absence was a silence I barely registered. Ethan's presence was a rich, overwhelming symphony. I went back to work part-time, managing my career and motherhood with the same efficient planning I had applied to the lawsuit. I realized that the calm, measured strength I had always seen in Michael, I possessed in spades. But unlike him, I used that strength to nurture, not to destroy. I was no longer the woman seeking security from a partner. I was the security. Life with Ethan quickly settled into a new, beautiful routine. The early months were a blur of sleepless nights and astonishing breakthroughs. The first smile, the grasp of a tiny hand, the gurgling recognition of my voice. Each milestone solidified the quiet strength I had found in motherhood. I had feared that single parenting would be isolating, but the opposite was true. The constant, undeniable need of a child grounds you in the present in a way nothing else can. The apartment, now truly ours, was full of light and the sounds of a happy baby. I had created the stability I craved, but this time, it was elastic, adaptable, and built entirely on my own resources and decisions. The arrangement with Michael was predictably cold. He exercised his visitation rights rarely and formally, strictly through the supervised agency. The visits were scheduled bi-monthly at a sterile, neutral facility. I never attended, communicating only through Leo or the supervising social worker. The reports were consistent. Michael was awkward, quiet, and seemed fundamentally uncomfortable with the chaos of a baby. He treated the interaction less like a bond and more like a mandated obligation, ticking a legal box. This lack of genuine connection hurt for Ethan's sake, but for my own, it was just confirmation that I had made the right choice to sever the tie completely. He simply wasn't built for the messiness of real life. Years passed, marked by Ethan's growth and my own professional recovery. I excelled at work, finding that the focus and decisiveness I had honed during the legal battle translated perfectly into my project management career. I was promoted, able to afford excellent childcare, and began saving for Ethan's education, independent of Michael's mandated payments. The final piece of the financial and legal puzzle came when Ethan was 5. Michael, having never fully recovered from the reputational damage and the loss of significant assets, was forced to sell the remainder of his personal stock in his firm to cover accumulating legal fees and increasing debt. Leo called me with the news. Michael's architect firm is effectively dissolving, Sarah. He's taking a staff position at a larger national chain, a massive step down. The good news is, we have successfully petitioned to have a trust fund set up, managed by a third party, utilizing a lump sum of his remaining liquid assets, which guarantees Ethan's required child support payments until he is 18. You are finally, truly, done with the transactional relationship. Hearing that, I felt a deep wave of peace wash over me. I wasn't interested in his ruin, only in my son's security. Now, even that last, cold thread of dependency was severed. That evening, I sat down with Ethan on the sofa, reading him a book about a brave little bear who built his own strong den. Ethan was a brilliant, warm child, possessing a quiet thoughtfulness that was completely his own. "Mommy," he said, looking up from the page, "why don't I ever see my other dad?" I took a deep breath. This was the conversation I had rehearsed for years, ready to deliver a mature, age-appropriate truth. You have 2 dads, sweetie. But sometimes, people have different ideas about how to build a family. Your birth father, Michael, is a very smart man and he's an architect. He builds very specific, structured things, and sometimes he didn't know how to build the right kind of structure for a family. Building a family takes a lot of love, flexibility, and a desire to put others first, and he didn't have those things. He made choices that meant he couldn't be the father you needed, in the way you needed him to be. I pulled him close. But that's okay, because I had to make my own choices. I chose to build a strong, warm den for us, just the 2 of us, and it's full of all the love and structure you need. Our family is strong, Ethan. It's built on truth, not on blueprints. He nodded, processing the big words. He didn't look sad, just thoughtful. He was used to the warmth of our life, and he trusted my explanation. The bear made a good den, he decided, looking back at the book. It has a strong roof. It does, I agreed, kissing the top of his head. And so do we, my love, a very strong roof. The forgiveness came not from a grand gesture towards Michael, but from the acceptance of the reality I had forged. I no longer held resentment for his failure. I held gratitude for the strength it had forced me to find. He had denied us, but in doing so, he had gifted me my entire, fiercely independent life. I didn't take him for everything out of spite. I took him for the resources that rightfully belonged to my son, and in return, I gained the most valuable thing of all, my freedom and my self-respect. I look out my window now, sometimes years later. The sycamore tree outside our window is huge, its branches reaching out, heavy with autumn leaves. It reminds me that growth takes time, and sometimes the pruning of what isn't working is essential for the structure to stand strong. When I started that journey, standing in that quiet office, hearing those devastating words, he said the baby wasn't his problem. I was paralyzed by heartbreak. I felt small, vulnerable, and utterly alone. I thought that because my relationship was over, my future was too. But what I learned is that when someone tries to remove your foundation, you discover you have the tools to build a brand new one, better and stronger than the first. Justice, I realized, isn't always about retribution. Sometimes, it's simply about demanding fairness, demanding the truth, and securing the rights that are inherently yours and your child's. It's about replacing emotional chaos with legal clarity. I didn't take Michael for everything, but I ensured he provided for the life he tried to deny. And in doing that, I empowered myself to become the mother and the woman I was meant to be. I hope that if you are ever in a moment of crisis, where someone you trust tries to invalidate your truth or abandon their responsibility, you remember this. Don't scream, don't plead, and don't panic. Get quiet, get smart, and get a good lawyer. Your dignity is your greatest asset, and your calm, measured response is far more terrifying to a narcissist than any fit of rage. My son is happy, thriving, and safe. And that, in the end, is the only measure of success that matters. Would you have chosen the quiet, legal path of justice, or would the anger have driven you to an emotional confrontation? Tell me your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story of finding strength and justice resonated with you, please consider subscribing. Your support helps us share more tales of resilience and truth, proving that even from the ruins of betrayal, a beautiful life can be built. Thank you for listening.